So in this video, we're going to take a relatively common scenario and we're going to build a prototype dashboard to try to make a first step in resolving the scenario. So the scenario is this. You work for a computer electronics retail chain in London, England. Your boss walks in and he's very clearly agitated. And he comes to you and he says, "Build me a dashboard that tells me what our laptops are selling for." And he then storms out. Now, what are you going to do as an analyst? Well, he's a little bit annoying and he's a little bit of a jerk and he's clearly agitated and yelling at us. And so we've probably been trained not to run after him and ask questions at this point. But the issues that we have, besides we have a bad boss, is that the context is missing. Clearly he's come in agitated. He's asking for some metrics. Did he just come from a meeting where he's being excoriated for having not enough profit, etc.? Why does he need these numbers? Why is this a critical thing? Understanding that context helps you to understand what is the question that the person is trying to answer. And in this case, the question is too broad. Does he mean what is the average price for all of our laptops being sold? What's our total revenue from laptops? Do we mean by store? Do we mean by model? And what are the measures that make sense? Is it per unit? What are the things that are going to really answer the questions that your boss has in this situation? Now, even if you have a good boss, this scenario is way too familiar. You have unclear requirements. You're not quite sure what the goals of doing the analysis are. You don't have that context. And so what do? Well, if you can't get good communication with the customers, one thing you might try to do is to do a rapid prototyping, iterative approach. And the reason that we might want to do this is that customers really very infrequently have the ability to articulate what they need until they actually see the finished result of what you've done. And they say, "Oh yes, that's what I need." And so going in this cyclical process of rapid prototyping is a great way to get to the specifics of requirements. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to build a first prototype of a dashboard that we might be able to bring to the boss and say, "Okay, here's what I've done so far. What do you need? Which of these parts is good? Which of these parts is not what you need?" And go on from there. All right? So what I want you to do is use the file that's linked to in the video and download that, and we're going to work from that file. Open that up and we'll keep going. So as I said before, this question of what are our laptops selling for is not necessarily narrow enough for us to know exactly what we've been asked to do, because there's lots of ways of looking at what our laptops are selling for. And sometimes our users don't really know what they want to be shown about the different questions that they have that they need to answer. So in this case, this dashboard is just what I would consider a first prototype. It's got different measures of how the laptop sales are doing for January. Actually, the one we'll do is actually for the whole year of 2008. And it's got, for example, what's the average price across all sales. It's got a histogram of distribution of sales. It's got some average sales price by the store. It's got some average sales price by where the customers are coming from. It's got a table that has what's the total sales in each store, and then it's got a Sparkline graph that kind of shows the trend. And then again, it shows this distribution by store, which honestly is not showing a whole lot of difference between these stores. And so it might be useful, it might not be. And that's what we'll find in general with different data visualizations, is that we'll have to do a lot of trial and error. Now in this case, the top part of this dashboard is kind of this light green. The bottom part is kind of this light lilac. And that's to kind of visually show that this is one area of the dashboard, while this is all one part of the dashboard that's supposed to work together. It's not a perfect dashboard by any means, but it might be something that you could show to your users as far as a first step, and then ask them kind of what's really what they need, and what that looks like, something they could use, and then you kind of go from there. Okay, so now we're going to build this dashboard or that dashboard piece by piece. We're going to start by creating the text header that shows the average price for all laptop sales over all of the stores. All right. So we're going to do this. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to take this retail price, which is the sales price field. We're going to drop it into text. And you can see here that it puts in a number. And we should know that this number is Great British Pounds. All right. So one thing we'd like to do is make sure that any time that retail price shows up, it shows up as pounds. So to do that, one of the things you can do in Tableau, we could format it right here as part of this visualization, but since we want this to be the case in all of our visualizations, we'll come over here to the retail price field. We'll click on the drop down, we'll choose default properties, and we'll choose number format. And we're going to choose currency standard, and then you have to make sure that you choose the correct locale, and then you will get the Great British Pounds as your value here as far as the definition. Now, if you want to get rid of the 2 decimal places, you can go back here to retail price, go to default properties, and go back to number format, and now choose currency custom and just get rid of the 2 decimal places. All right, great. So now we've actually got this this number that we want, but we don't want to just say the number. So one thing we want to do is just get rid of the titles on all of these graphs. And this is kind of boring. So all we'll do now is go into the text. We will put in what we'd like it to say, average sales price for all laptops. And then maybe we'll give this a little bit of formatting. Maybe we make it like 16. Probably put a colon here. Maybe make this bold. And that looks pretty good. So we'll hit apply and hit OK. Now, because I already know that I'm going to divide that dashboard into the 2 areas by color, I'm going to color the color for the top of the dashboard. So I'll right click and I'll choose format. I'll go to my sheet and I'm going to go to the fill for the sheet, and I'm going to pick this bottom blue, but you can pick anything you want. All right. And now, because I see this text is kind of maybe stark on this background because it's all black, maybe I'll come back in here to my text and I'll change the color of this text. Maybe on one side I'll make it kind of a lighter blue, and then maybe I'll make it bold, and then on this side I'll make it a little bit darker blue, and that lighter blue is not good. It's too light, so we're going to make this the darker blue as well. All right, and we're going to hit OK. And the last thing we're going to do is say, hey, choose to fit the entire view, and then we're going to make sure that we align it in the center. Now, why do we say to choose the entire view? That's because whenever we drop something onto a dashboard, we generally define the size that we want that part of the dashboard to be. And if we choose entire view on the sheets, it will always fill all of the space given to it on the dashboard, even if that space might be a different ratio, etc. Okay, you can always set that at the dashboard level, but I find that it's just better practice to do that here. Now I'm going to name this sheet header because that's going to be the top of our dashboard. And when we go to the dashboard pane, it would be nice to know which graph is which. All right, so now we'll work on our maps. They're going to be really similar to each other. So we'll make one and then we'll duplicate it and make changes. The first one we'll do is store postcode. Now, one thing you should know is that when you have the geographic rules set, for instance, country and store postcode, you need to have both levels of detail here. So if you just put in store postcode in Tableau, most of the time it's not going to know what's going on. It's better in the United States than in other countries, but you need to make sure that you include the country detail as well. So the way to do that easily is to put store postcode right here into detail, and it puts country in for us. All right. Now note it automatically puts in a dot for each of the stores. We'd like that to be a filled map. So we're going to go ahead and hit filled map, and we get the actual postcode boundaries. And then to do our gradient that we want to do, we'll go ahead and just throw retail price into color because it is a continuous variable. And you know that because it's a green pill, not a blue pill. Tableau uses a gradient color scheme. If it were a discrete field, this would be blue and it would use rainbow colors. All right. Now we want to do a couple more things here because this is not especially interpretable by most users. They don't know the geography of their city very well as far as what's where without some more cues. So we'll give them some more visual cues. We're going to go to the map menu and we're going to choose map layers. And now we are going to choose to include the streets, the county and the region boundaries, the state and province boundaries, and then the zip code boundaries and the zip code labels. All right. Now, again, this is not necessarily perfect. And maybe we want to change some of the formatting. Maybe instead of using this light style, maybe I want to use this normal style, which gives you kind of more cues because you can see the parks and more clearly see where the river runs. And for now, this is where I'll leave it. All right. Now to do this for the other map that we're going to use, and again, we're going to hide the sheet. And we're going to call this one map by store code. We'll right click that and choose duplicate. We'll rename it map by customer code. And all we have to do to change this is drop customer code into the detail and pull store postcode out. And then we will get the map for all of the customer codes. All right. And again, I've got some of retail price, but is that really what I want? Because that's not fair if one store has a lot more foot traffic. So what I want to do on this dashboard for both maps is change from sum of retail price to average of retail price. Now, again, depending upon the question that our user has, who asked for this map, maybe it is sum of retail price, but that doesn't really answer the question, what are our laptops selling for? So we're going to, for now, use the average retail price. And I'll go back here to the store code and I'll choose to change the measure to average. And now we've got all of the pieces that we need for the top part of the dashboard. Okay, now before we build the other graphs, let's go and build this part of the dashboard and talk about some of the dashboard components that are probably good to use, and maybe just talk about some interesting things that you might have to deal with when you're building dashboards. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on the new dashboard button. I'll click on that. Now, if you know that your users are going to be space constrained by a particular number of pixels or by a particular device, you might choose to make the dashboard based upon that size. And in this case, it's using a default size of 1000 by 800. I personally find that I almost never have a user base that always uses a particular device or size. And so I make it automatic so that on devices that are big enough, it will use more space, and on devices that are smaller, it'll scale to size. Now there's other things we can do, like actually set it to particular device sizes and set the layout by devices, etc., but we're not going to do that right now. Now over here we have our objects panel, and even though you can just drag and drop things onto a dashboard without doing this, I prefer to actually create my panels in the dashboard before I start dropping the visualizations in there. There's some reasons for that we'll talk about when we're like formatting color, etc. But if you're going to do like 2 different background colors, this is the way that you're going to be able to do it the most easily. All right. So I'm going to put this header in here. And actually, I was wrong. We didn't do everything we needed to do quite yet. So before we do this, let's go back and do the histogram. So I'm going to make a new worksheet, and this is so easy. We're just going to click on retail price. We're going to come over here to the show me tab, and we're going to choose histogram. And Tableau does all the nice things that Tableau does to make a histogram for us. It creates the bin field, and it determines what's the most statistically perfect size of bin. And this makes it look like a really nice normal curve. And it's setting the bins at actually 36.7. Now, if you want that to be more like interpretable, maybe you want to make your bin size 50 or something like this. But for now, I'm just going to leave it using the bin size of 36.7, which is what Tableau defines. I do want to do a little bit of formatting here. So I'm going to right click on the graph and choose format. I'm going to get rid of my grid lines in my columns and rows. I'm going to get rid of my, that's what I want to do. I think I'm going to just leave it like that. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hide this header. I don't need to show that header. And I'm actually going to hide, I'm not going to hide that header, but I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to choose to just say number of laptops sold, so it's more useful. And actually, I think I'm going to come back here and show the header here, because why would I not show them what the actual values are? But I am going to hide this this retail price bin, because that doesn't make sense. So maybe I'll just call it retail price. And close this. And the last thing I have to do is I have to set that background color that I want to set. So I'm going to right click again and choose format. If I had closed this, I would have needed to do that. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to the shading, and I want to choose to make the sheet that light blue that we created for the other graph, right? The one that's over here on the header. And now what I'm going to do is go back to my dashboard, and I'm going to put in those other 3 visualizations. So I'm going to put in, oops, let me change sheet 4 to histogram. I'm going to come here and I'm going to drop the map by store code in. I'm going to drop the histogram in. I'm going to drop the map by customer code in. I'm going to hide this for now. We might bring it back. I'm going to resize this so that that average header doesn't take up so much space. I'm going to hide the title. Going to take up less space again. And all right, so we've got our 3 graphs in. They're not the way we want them yet. So I'm going to throw another vertical in for the bottom row. And now these kind of look like what we would have on the dashboard. But we see that there's still some issues, right? The background of these graphs isn't matching the background of the dashboard, but we'll come back to that after we finish the bottom part of the dashboard. All right, so now we'll go back and build the rest of the dashboard components. We'll put it all together, and then we'll come back and fix the formatting of this dashboard. All right, so the first thing we want to create in this dashboard is the table, and then we're going to create the sparklines and this box plot that are going to all work together on this bottom part of the dashboard. So the first thing we'll build is this table. To do that, we're just going to make a new graph. We're going to call this table. And it's really quite easy. We'll take the retail price and we'll put it in columns. And this time we actually do want the sum of retail price because we're going to show the total sales for each store, not the average price for each store. And then we're going to put the store postcode into the rows. That's going to give us a bar chart. We're going to actually say we don't want a bar chart, we want a table. So we're going to go ahead and hit table. We're going to tell that table to use the entire height that it's going to be given on the dashboard. We're going to hide this title. And then in order to line things up nicely, and because we don't really need this, we're going to right click on store postcode up here and choose to hide the field labels for rows. Now our table's mostly done at this point, but we're going to go up into the format menu and get rid of these extra lines. So I'm going to right click and choose format. Now that's actually a border. So I'm going to go to the borders area and I want to get rid of the row divider, and that gets rid of my lines at the top and the bottom. Now the last thing we want to do is we actually want to color in these boxes by the retail price, the relative retail price magnitude. So what we'll do is we're going to put the sum of retail price also into color. Now that colors the text, which isn't really what we want. What we want is to color the box behind the text. And so all we have to do for that is to change this mark from automatic to square. And now the color is on the square and the text color is automatically generated by Tableau based upon the background color. All right, so that's our graph right now. Maybe we should go in here and right click and format this label and make the font a little bit bigger. So maybe we'll make that like 12 bold. And that looks good. Maybe we'll just kind of shift this in a little bit, save some space. And that looks pretty good. So now we've got our table that we need. And the next thing we're going to need is those sparklines. So we'll create a new worksheet. We'll call it Sparklines. And what we will do with a sparkline is we're going to create a line graph for every customer postcode. So we're going to put, for each store postcode, we're going to put the store postcode into rows. We're going to put the date in the columns, and we don't want just the year. We actually want to go down here to the continuous month. Now it wouldn't matter in this case because we've only got data for 1 year. But if we had data for more than 1 year, we would definitely want to be down here in the continuous month because we wouldn't want to aggregate over all of the Januaries. We just want each month to stand alone. So I'm going to choose continuous month, and then I'm going to choose for the value of this, I'm going to put retail price here. And in this case, we do want sum of retail price because it's going to be a by store sparkline, just like on the table. Now you'll notice that a lot of these lines look really flat. And why is that? Well, it's because this y-axis for every one of these charts is based upon the range from the lowest to the highest across all of these lines. Now, if we were interested in comparing magnitudes, this would actually be appropriate. But we're not. In Sparklines, we're only concerned with the performance of each line to its particular category. because all the sparkline is supposed to show us is the overall trend, the high and low points, and allow us to compare where the start and the end points are compared to the high and low. So in order to make each one of these independent, we just right-click on retail price. We'll choose Edit the Axis. And all we need to do is check off this here, independent axis ranges for each row or column. And all of a sudden, we see a lot more shape in all of these lines. All right? Now, in order to show the high and the low point, we could just come over here to the label. We could choose Show Mark Labels. And there's all the mark labels, and then only choose to show the min and the max. And that would get us the basic functionality of a sparkline. But again, we're not interested in magnitude in this case. We just want the dot to be on the points. And again, we could take the label off and just show the points. But what we really want to do is to do something in a way that we can have these points be a different color for the line. And to do that, what we're going to do is create another graph that we superimpose onto this using a dual axis that just shows the high point and the low point for each line. And I created a calculated field here to show us this functionality. So I'm going to hit Edit. And you'll see what it shows here is it says if the window max sum equals the sum of retail price. And what that means is for every point along here, the sum of retail price, if this point equals the maximum point in this window, then put in the retail price. If this point equals the minimum value in this window of sum of retail price, then put in sum of retail price. Because we actually want the same values on these dots so that they show up on the same spot visually. All right, and so all this is basically saying is if you're one of the min or the max, put into this field high-low retail price, the sum of retail price. All right, and all we have to do now is drag high-low retail price up here into rows. And now you're going to see that we've got a dot and a dot for the high and the low, but they don't really look like they're going to match up to these lines. Why is that? Because if you'll notice here, the high-low retail price has got that same problem that this retail price had, which is it's basing its range on all of the data. So we just have to do the same thing, which is to right-click and edit the axis, choose independent axis ranges for each row or column. All right, and so now these will superimpose a little bit. So we'll go up here and we'll choose to click on the drop down of high-low retail price, and we will, we will dual axis. And you'll see here that the dots now fall on the line, and we've got high-low retail price, which is blue. We've got retail price, which is orange. We'll change that in a little while. In order to make this high-low green and red, I created another calculated field, which is right here. And again, it's if the sum of retail price is the minimum, then in this field, put in low. If it's the maximum, in this field, put in high. That's all it's going to have. So we'll hit OK. And we'll drop this into color. But remember, we want to be not on the all mark, not on the sum of retail price mark. We want to be on the high-low retail price mark, and we'll drag this we're going to drag the color high-low retail price into color, and you'll see that we've got null, we've got high, we've got low. Now, why do we have null? Because we only put a value into the high-low retail price if it was the high or the low. All right, so we've got some nulls here. We can hide the indicator for nulls, that's fine. And now we can finish formatting the line and the dots for these sparklines. So the first thing we're going to do is for the high-low retail price, we're going to go into color. We're going to choose to edit the colors, and we're going to make the high green. The low is going to stay red, and we're not going to worry about the nulls because we're not going to show those. So we're going to go ahead and hit apply. and OK. And now you see that we've got green and red. We want to make those a little bit bigger, so I'm going to click on the size mark card, and I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to go to the sum of retail price mark, and I'm going to change its color because I don't really want it to be orange or quite so bold. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to choose color, edit the colors, and I'm going to go to my Seattle grays, and I'm going to pick this one. I think this is going to be a nice kind of background color. Hit apply. Yeah, and that looks pretty good. So we'll hit OK. And we're going to go here to size, and we're going to make this line a little bit less of a thick line. And you'll note that these dots are not quite lined up with the lines, right? And that's because even though we've put these two axes on the same independence, the scale isn't quite the same. So let's just right click over here on high-low retail price and choose to synchronize the axes, and that's going to put the dots right on the centers of these lines. All right, now we're almost there. We're going to do a few things to get rid of the extra stuff in these sparklines. We're going to right click over here and choose to not show the header. We're going to right click over here and choose not to show the header. And because we're working together with that table that's next to it, we're going to get rid of this header as well. And we're going to get rid of the month of date axis header. And finally, we're going to tell this graph to use the entire view. We're going to hide these cards. And the last thing we want to do is kind of get rid of all of this stuff that's the reference lines, the zero lines, etc. So here we go. We're going to right click here and choose format. First thing we'll do is get rid of all these boundaries. So we'll go to the boundaries, we'll go to the borders here, and we're going to get rid of all the row dividers, and we're going to get rid of all of the column dividers, and those dividers are gone. Now we need to get rid of all these grid lines. So we're going to go to the Format Grid Lines icon. We're going to go to Rows, and we're going to get rid of all the grid lines and all of the zero lines. And that's going to bring us here. So our sparklines are basically done. We're going to, hide our titles and everything at the end, but our sparklines are basically done. And I just don't like that size being quite that small. So we'll make it like this, and hopefully that will fit and show on the dashboard without any trouble. All right, and the last thing we have to do is to create the box plot. So I'm going to make a new sheet. I'm going to call it box plot. And it's very similar to what we've done before. We're going to have customer postcode. We're going to have retail price. We're going to have, well, that's actually all we want to do. We're going to choose show me, and we're going to choose over here, box and whisker plots. And you'll notice it doesn't quite do what we want. What it does is it's giving us a point for every postcode instead of a row for every postcode or a column for every postcode. So what we're going to do here is now put store postcode into columns. Now it's doing one record for sum of retail price for each store postcode. All we need to do is go up to the analysis menu and choose to deaggregate the measures, and we get the retail price for every single sale in every single store. Now obviously this is kind of messy, so we're going to clean it up a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is turn this on its side. So all we need to do here is come up to the switch swap rows and columns button and go ahead and click it. And now we've got horizontal, which is what we'd like. We're also going to fit this to the entire view. And then we're going to take a look at what actually happened when we turn this into a box plot. What happened in the background is that we're going to go down here to the x-axis, and we're going to see that we have an edit reference line choice. And if we haven't added a reference line ourselves, which means Tableau must have done it for us. And so we're going to choose to edit this reference line, and we're going to see that it created a box plot, and it's including the data within 1.5 times the inner quartile range. So that's where these whiskers end. And then these are all considered outliers, all right? We actually, in this chart, are not that concerned with outliers. We just want to show the overall distribution. So we're going to make the whiskers extend to the maximum amount of the data, which is going to cover all of the, where the dots were. And then we don't need to hide the underlying marks, but if you didn't want to show the maximum extent of the data, but you didn't want all the dots in it, you could hide the underlying marks. All right, so we're going to do that. And we're basically there now. We just need to do a few things, one of which is to hide. Well, we're going to edit this axis first, and we're going to change the range so it doesn't go all the way down to 0. So we're going to go ahead and hit fixed for the axis range. We're going to make the start about 150, and we'll leave the fixed end where it is. And so you now can see that we're basically showing this distribution, and showing the exact values isn't that important because we can always add a tooltip that makes that more clear. Because again, what we're trying to do is illustrate the difference in ranges rather than necessarily the specifics of where they stop and they start. All right. So we're going to get rid of this retail price axis header. We don't need the store postcode header, again, because it's working with the graphs on the left. So we're going to go ahead and not show that header. And then we're going to get rid of these column grid lines, and we're going to go here to format. We're going to go to columns, and we're going to go to lines, and we're going to get rid of the grid lines. And we're basically there. All right, we'll hide the nulls, and we're good. Now let's go back to the dashboard, and we will put all this stuff together. Okay, we're going to click on the dashboard, and the first thing we're going to do is just get our graphs in here. Before we do that, we're going to create another vertical because we want to put a text header. And now let's switch back over to the dashboard. I like to keep this separate. It's just easier to manage. So I'm going to put text in here, and we're going to call this performance by store. Let's make it about 16, and let's center it, and let's make it bold, and we'll come back and fix the color once we decide what we want the color to be based upon the background. And so now we've got our performance by store header. Now we'll take this vertical and just put it up here. And now we're ready to put our other graphs in here. So we'll put table in first. We'll take Sparklines second. We'll take box plot third. And we are close to being able to do what we need to do. All right, so now we're going to hide the headers or the titles for all of these boxes. And we're going to hide the titles for these. We're going to hide the title for here. I got to go figure out why these are cut off. Let's go back to our Sparklines, and we'll see that we have a couple that are cut off, which is a little weird. Let's go ahead and undual axis these. And we can see that we're still cut off here. So let's show our headers and let's see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to choose to edit the axis, and I'm going to make sure that everything's what it needs to be. So we've got independent axis ranges don't include 0. And let's do the same thing on the other axis, which is here. And we'll do independent axis ranges don't include 0. And then we're just going to make sure that these are synchronized. So we're going to come back over here and dual axis it. We're going to synchronize these axes. And it looks like that fixed our cutoff problem. So removing 0 helped our problem here. So we'll hide our headers, And we're back to looking good. We'll come over here to the dashboard and everything still looks pretty good. Maybe we just don't have enough space here. So let's try to give this bottom part a little bit more space. Let's just try to, we don't maybe need quite as much space on the top. And now we will give this bottom part more space. We've still got a little cutoff, so let's come back here to our Sparklines and let's just make our dots just a little bit smaller, not too much. And now we're going to come over here and remove this from the dashboard. And it looks pretty much like the dashboard that we're trying to create. Now, how do we deal with all of this background being white and these borders, etc.? Now, to handle that, we're going to have to go to the formatting area and we're going to have to go to the layout area. So let's go here to the dashboard layout and take a look at what we have. Now, one thing we have is the ability to modify the entire dashboard or any of these tiled areas of the dashboard. Now, we're going to click on this tiled area first, which is the whole dashboard. This is the top of the hierarchy. And we're going to give it the background of the same blue that we initially gave this box. And you're going to see that in general, we've got everything being this background color, but each of the graphs have their own backgrounds. So we already did the blue here, we already did the blue here, but we haven't done anything down here on the bottom because we want it to be a different color, and we'll have to take a look at how we do that. Now the next thing we're going to do is if we click on horizontal, we'll see that it's this one. If we click on the next vertical, we'll see that it's performance by store. If we click on this next horizontal, you see that we're going to have all of these pieces. So the first thing we want to do is change the background color for this area and this area. All right, so what we're going to do is I clicked on performance by store and I'm going to change its background to the lilac that we're going to plan to use, which is up here. Maybe we'll use this one at the bottom. All right, and now we want to come down here, make sure that, and I've clicked on performance by store, which is this actual thing inside the tile. And the thing that's creating this little border is the padding. So I'm going to get rid of all of the padding. So I'm just going to make 0 for the padding because so now we've basically finished our dashboard. If I put it into all 0 slideshow mode, and now that border you'll see is gone. We've got our area up here that's and we have to do the same thing down here that's for the other parts of this hierarchy. We might rearrange things. Maybe this is too much space on the bottom. We have to tell it to have a perfect lilac background that we want to use. We'd want to spend a lot of time on making each one of these less the table, the box, and a lot more informative, and the box plot. But we're going to do that on a different video. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you feel like you could make this dashboard yourself, and I hope that it gives you some ideas about how you might change your dashboards on these other graphs. So all we have to do is go back to these graphs wherever you're working with. We'll start with the box plot, and we're going to hit Format. We're going to come to the Fill for the entire sheet, and we're going to choose that same lilac color that we're using. And so when I go back to the dashboard, you're going to see that this part is the same color. All right. Then we're going to do the same thing on the Sparklines and the table. So the Sparklines, we need to hit Format. Oh, we were already there. We'll go to the Fill and we'll choose the lilac color. And then we'll go to the table and we'll choose the lilac color. And now when we go to the dashboard, all of those things will be the same color. And I've still got a little bit of work to do because when I put this into slideshow mode, we can see that there are still these boundaries that we've got to deal with. So we'll go back and we'll fix that. Now the last thing we have to do is just get rid of all of these white borders. And that's something that we do at the dashboard level. We've already gotten rid of the padding between the pieces that are inside these different layout regions, but now we have to get rid of the areas between the layout regions. So all we're going to do there is come back here to the dashboard and go to the layout. And then what we want to do is for the entire dashboard, so that's the top of this hierarchy down here on the left, we want to click on this tiled and we want to get rid of all of the outer padding. So I'm going to type 0 in here and that padding is gone. And so this last little problem that we have is this little gap right here. And you'll notice that we've got a vertical that ends here, but this text thing isn't quite as big as the vertical. Now there's not a fit to entire view on this. What we have to do is come over here and choose to hit the drop down here and choose to fix the height, choose to edit the height. And we'll make this about 40 pixels. And what that's going to do is fill in that space. And so now there's no gaps. Now we've basically finished the dashboard. We've got our area up here that's all one color, our area down here that's another color. We might rearrange things. Maybe this is too much space on the bottom. It's certainly not a perfect dashboard. We'd want to spend a lot of time on making our tooltips a lot less out of the box and a lot more informative, but we're going to do that on a different video. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you feel like you could make this dashboard yourself, and I hope that it gives you some ideas about how you might change your dashboards or make new dashboards in your work and wherever you're working with Tableau.